Hello everybody, welcome to Gardening with the Landscape Connection. My name's Michelle. I live in Northern Illinois, Zone 5. So I am in the heart of the Midwest. So welcome if this is your first time here, and if you are somebody that's returning, thank you so much for tuning in. Today is Tomato Day. We're going to talk about tomatoes today. So let's talk about the kinds of tomatoes there are. And first we're going to start with their habit. So there are 3 different kinds of tomatoes. There are indeterminate tomatoes, which actually grow and grow and grow and grow, and they just keep on growing until you either take them out of the ground, you top off and cut the top of them off, like later in the season, or a hard frost takes them out. They are a vining type of tomato, so they just grow and grow and grow. Those are indeterminates, and most of the tomatoes out there are indeterminates. Now, there are also what we call determinate tomatoes. These are smaller in stature, and they are going to grow to a determined size, and they're going to stop growing. They're going to set all of their fruit pretty much at the same time, and then all of the tomatoes will ripen around the same time as well, usually within like a 2-week window. So the benefit of those, if you have a small space, great. If you're going to grow in a container, great. If you want to get a bunch of canning done all at the same time, great. Roma tomatoes are what we would call a determinate tomato. So lots of advantages to those, but if you want to keep producing tomatoes all season long, then you want an indeterminate. Now maybe you want one that's smaller, but that's going to keep producing all season long. Those are called semi-determinates. So those are out there as well. Okay, other things about tomatoes that you need to know, there are what we call hybrid tomatoes. So hybrid tomatoes are when someone took 2 tomatoes and they want to take the traits or the best traits of both of those tomatoes and combine them together to make one new tomato that maybe is more disease resistant or has better flavor or better coloring or something. And so they cross them together in a lab and they create a new tomato, and those are hybrids. There are a lot of hybrids out there and they make great tomatoes. But the one thing with a hybrid that you can't do is collect seeds. So if that's something that you want to try, hybrids isn't the way to go, because when you collect the seed and you dry it and then you try to plant it the next year, you might get one or the other of the parent, or you might get some funky thing that just has no flavor whatsoever. But let's say you do want to collect seeds, then you want to go after what's called open pollinators. Usually all of this information is on the tags, but you can also Google it as well and probably get that information off the internet. Now, open pollinators are tomatoes that can also cross-pollinate if they're, too many varieties planted close together. So if this is something you want to try, you either plant all the same thing close together, the same kind or variety of tomato, or you need to space them like 15 feet apart so that they don't cross-pollinate. Also, the older the variety is, the further apart you're probably going to have to plant them. And that brings me to heirloom tomatoes. Now, all heirloom tomatoes are open pollinators, but not all open pollinators are heirlooms. Heirloom tomatoes are those tomatoes that have been around forever, and they have passed their genetic information from generation to generation to generation. Now, they might not have all of the disease resistance of some of the hybrids or some of the traits and characteristics of those, but I guarantee you they are probably some of the best tasting tomatoes you'll ever eat. And no matter what tomato you decide to grow, I'm telling you, if you grow a tomato and you love it and you grow it and you pick it and you eat it, it's still the best tomato out there. You'll never be able to top it at a grocery store. And because you grew it with your own 2 hands, it is so worth it. I grow Beefmasters and Purple Cherokees every year, and they are later in the season because they're a bigger tomato. I can't wait to pick my first one. And when I do, we have BLTs and we chop those up and put those on there. Oh, they're just to die for. They're so delicious. Okay, so there's lots of different tomatoes out there as far as the classifications of what they are. And what I recommend is that you buy what you like, eat what you like, grow what you like. So you've got your Roma tomatoes, which are like your plum tomatoes that you're going to make your sauces and your spaghetti sauces and your salsas with. They're really meaty, they don't have as many seeds, and they're great for that. You've got your heirloom tomatoes like the Black Krim and the Cherokee Carbon and the Big Rainbow. All of these are different sizes, and what's nice about them is, again, they've been around for a really long time. You've got your grouping of cherry tomatoes and your little plum tomatoes. Sun Sugar is probably my favorite. It's an orange tomato. Absolutely fabulous. Then you've got your main crop tomatoes, which are like your slicers. Celebrity Plus is a good one. Champion's another good one. Mountain Merit. And so these are like your salad size and your slicers. All right, then you've got your big beef tomatoes, which make the great big ones like the Beef Master and the Big Boy Plus. Those are all going to be your really large tomatoes. Sometimes they can be misshapen when you grow them, have scarring, but that's kind of normal. Now, one of the things you want to do when you are getting ready to plant your tomatoes is you want to look for all the suckers that are on here, or if there's any flowers. So if there's flowers on here, I know you don't want to do this, but you need to pinch them off, because you're not trying to produce tomatoes, you're trying to produce a good, healthy, strong plant. The other thing you want to do is in the crotch of the plant, so here's the main stem, you're looking for these suckers right here, and you want to pinch those out as well. And as you see those when they're growing, you want to pinch them out. Now, if you don't pinch them out, it's not the end of the world, but you will probably get smaller tomatoes, because these are still going to grow. They're going to produce a big long stem. They're going to get fruit. They're going to get tomatoes, but your tomatoes will get smaller. Okay, the other thing that happens is sometimes the tomatoes in the pots, especially as we get later and later into the season, they start to get leggy in here. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad tomato, because if I look at this tomato, it's pretty darn healthy. So what I want to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to pinch all of these leaves off right here. And then when I plant it in the ground, I'm going to plant it this way. And then this will stand up on its own and continue to grow. This will create this really super great root system right here, and pinch all those off. And then this will be roots, this will be underground, this will straighten itself up, and you will have a fabulous tomato plant. So leggy ones aren't bad if they're still healthy. So just check those out. Okay, so 3 really good practices to have when you're growing tomatoes is 1, consistent watering. I can't even emphasize how important that is. One of the things that can happen when you don't have consistent watering is that blossom end rot. And when we let them completely dry out in between waterings, and then we try to make up for it by throwing 10 gallons of water on it and then letting them dry out, and then 10 gallons of water. They can't handle that. So that's when you get cracking on your tomatoes, like when they split, because you put so much water, the plant can't take all of it in, and so the tomatoes they burst and they crack. And then you get blossom end rot. Now, a lot of people will say it's because there's a calcium deficiency, and sometimes that is true. But the calcium is probably in the soil, and because of your insufficient watering or inconsistent watering, it can't release it up into the plant. Now, one of the things that I do is I use tomato tone when I plant, and I will put that in the hole before I plant them. The other thing I do is once the tomatoes get about the size of a golf ball, about like that, then I'm going to fertilize them again, and then I fertilize them every 3 weeks. Now, the other thing your tomatoes need is something to grow up. So here you can see I've put this one on a I can't even talk, on a stake right here, and it's going to grow up this pole. I actually want to pinch off these flowers right here, because I just planted these like 2 days ago, and I don't want flowers right now, I want roots. Okay, and I'm going to let it grow up this pole, and then I've used a heavy-duty tomato cage. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can stake tomatoes, from a California weave to I've seen them grow them up a string. I've seen people use cattle panels. These are like the heavy-duty ones. They work pretty good for me. These are like those cheap ones that you can buy. I use those for my peppers. I don't use them for a tomato, because the tomato needs a little bit more support than that. The other thing that you want to do is you do want to mulch underneath your tomatoes. It's a really good practice. 1, it helps conserve the water, moisture in the soil. It helps stabilize soil temperature. It does help control some weeds. But the biggest thing it does is it stops the soil from splashing up on your leaves. And when you get a soil-borne illness like Vercillium wilt or blight, it's coming from the soil. And so when that dirt splashes up on the leaves, that's when you're getting that. So when you get blight, it usually starts at the bottom. It's when you get all that spotting all over the leaves, and then it travels its way up your plant. And you can slow it down by pinching off the leaves as you see it. But once you get it, you got it. And you can use a fungicide to get rid of it. That's not my way of gardening. I don't like to use chemicals in the garden. So I just kind of, I'll pinch my way up if I get it, or take the plant out. But mulching underneath it is a really good way, whether you use straw, cardboard, shredded up newspaper. I use a double processed natural mulch with no color in it. It's just like a bark mulch. I use that, something, so that doesn't splash up. Oh, look, there's another little tomato. Oh, that's the same one. So pinch those off. Okay, so that's good practice as well. The other thing is when your tomatoes are growing and you're getting towards the end of the season, when I say top it off, what I mean is I cut the top of the plant off. It'll be way up here, and I'll just cut the top of the plant off. And the reason I'm doing that is so that it doesn't continue to grow. It'll finish producing the tomatoes that are on the plant, and I'll also pinch off any flowers. Now, I'm normally doing this towards the end of August, beginning of September. That way I can finish off the season with my tomatoes. Now, we always end up with tomatoes at the end of the season, and they're green, and I always pick mine all out. I never waste them. I pick them out, I take them inside, I put them in a brown paper bag, and then I throw a banana in there. So when I put them in the bag, I put them single file in the bag, and I lay them in there. I use like a shopping bag, and then I throw a banana in there, and I close them up, and then I just leave them on the counter. And what happens is the banana is going to release a hormone called ethylene. God, it's not ethanol, it's ethylene. And that ethylene is what's going to trigger the ripening of the tomatoes. So that's a good way to finish off your tomatoes. The only downside is they will pretty much ripen all at the same time. So you have to find a way to use them all. But that's just a good way to not waste all those tomatoes at the end of the season. And you can get more of them to turn. Again, pinch those flowers off at the end so that they'll finish. So I don't know that I know any more about tomatoes than that. I hope this was helpful. I know I'm growing, I don't know, I think 6 different varieties. How many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay. So I have 9 varieties, a few more than I thought. But as the season progresses and we do some more garden tours, I'll take you through some of the different things that I'm doing. But remember, consistent watering. Pinch off those suckers in between the branches. Make sure that you plant them as deep as you can so you can get a good root system. Once you have them the size of a golf ball, fertilize them, and then fertilize them every 3 weeks after that. And I know I don't always let them ripen on the vine. Sometimes I'll pick them a little bit unripened and then take them inside and let them finish there. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If this was your first time here, I hope that you learned something and that this inspired you to maybe go plant some tomatoes. So I'm Michelle. Keep on gardening. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next one. Bye now.